Hello everyone, welcome back to episode 33 of the Empty Space In Between podcast. Thank you for tuning in again. Anya's episode was the last one to go out. It's done very well, hasn't it, Sam?
It has. Thank you to Anya for coming on.
Yeah, for a part two. It was interesting to get into her research because we didn't do it justice the first time.
No, your first time we come on, we literally just talked about Anya's life, basically. So, literally just had a deep convo about other things, didn't we? And we were like, yeah, we haven't talked about research here.
Before we get into our wonderful guest who we thank for coming on, Sam, you played a big gig yesterday.
Oh, yeah, you didn't know you were going to mention that.
Of course.
Yeah, Honey Motel played the O2 Academy, last night with Sundara Karma.
How did it go?
Well, I don't know, you were watching, how did it go?
Yeah, you were alright.
Nice one.
I thought you played
5 out of 10.
Considering as well, that was like your biggest gig, you played it very well.
Yeah, well, nice
you
one.
Sounded well. But yeah, so your new tune's out on the 30th of November.
Yeah. I didn't know you were going to throw all this in.
We've got to
self-promotion.
Because this will be the one that goes out just before it.
Alright then, I'll promote it right now. When We Die, We Die. That's the name of the song. Is out 30th of November, Honey Motel. Go on Instagram and pre-save it. You can get to Honey Motel Instagram from Empty Space In Between quite easy. I think you can go on one of mine or Ryan's profiles. We'll have probably tagged it somewhere. And yeah, shout out to everyone the 1,000 people that watched us last night at the O2 Academy with Sundara. It was a good gig.
Right, enough about you.
Enough about me.
Fed up for talking to you. So joining us today for episode 33, thank you very much for your time, is Dr. Ivan G. How you pronounce it? Yep. Now, the only reason I ask is we had Anya, who came on last time, we mispronounced the name. We were saying Anya, like a Scouse thing, and her
Anya. Anya.
And her partner, Chris Kavanagh. We were saying Kavanagh.
Yeah.
And then she corrected us, and we were like, "Well, we feel terrible."
So we apologise.
we had to do an apology.
Public apology. No, you're fine with mine. That's no problem.
So how have you been? How are we?
Yeah. Pretty busy at the moment.
Busy.
I can imagine.
Bit of a new role. At work,
what have you moved into?
Well, I'm now sort of more on the sort of managerial side of heading up some of our masters and undergraduate programs in public health. So
it takes up a lot of time, I imagine.
So yeah,
a lot more administration.
Yeah, more than I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm regretting my decisions.
Just sit there looking at the mound of paperwork. You're like, yes, this is stressful. But before we carry on, then, how would you describe yourself? So we found you on the LJMU website for research. So how do you describe yourself, and kind of what areas do you research in?
Well, I guess I'd describe myself as an academic who likes teaching, but also likes doing research.
Yeah.
And wants to do that research. And I'm always been interested in the environment and the impact on health, and that's what sort of led me into where I am. And yeah, the sort of research stuff that I've done has ended up focusing on that, on what the environmental impacts on health, air pollution, tobacco smoke, vaping.
Brilliant.
So those are things I like to explore.
Nice.
Right, so before we get into, I keep saying before we, I always do. Right, so before we do, I need to change it. I need to become more professional.
What do you need to say?
I don't know, but you know when you hear people who are just like good.
Good at podcasting. Yeah, I'll think of a better catchphrase. You ready?
You think of that, and we'll get into it. You can use it on the next one.
Okay.
Before we get into like your research and stuff, we like to like break the ice, and we ask like 3 highbrow, in brackets, silly questions, just to get to know you a bit better. So the first one we always ask, we've asked everyone this, is what's your favourite sandwich? And we judge heavily.
If you pick something bad, man.
I think, you know what, it's a really sort of traditional, I really like a BLT. I've always liked
it. You really can't go wrong with
it. I mean, public health is not very good for you, especially if you have too many of them. But as an occasional treat, it's
good for the mind when you haven't had it in a while. It releases those good endorphins and you feel happy.
Exactly.
Toasted bread.
Or normal bread.
Normal bread.
Brown.
Just a treat.
Yeah.
I like, you know what, you can't complain with that.
Brown to get the fibre in. Don't want that pointless fibre in the white.
Then.
Makes it, everything's solved with brown bread.
That was the whole Weight Watchers thing. Yeah, brown bread, brown rice.
If brown bread solved problems,
rice.
There'd be no one else overweight. I remember 20 years ago, like the brown bread phase come in, and your nana before some brown bread because it was healthy, and you're thinking, I'm sure 8 slices of brown bread is still bad for you now. You know what I mean? It still spikes your glucose now, I'm telling you.
This isn't the magic bullet you think it is now.
No.
Oh, it's brown, it's healthy, lads. You've had your eggs on brown this morning.
Oh, you've done well there. But you'll still use like full fat Lurpak butter.
Exactly, yeah.
So the next question we ask everyone, it's the standard question everyone asks. 3 people dead or alive. Who you having for a dinner party?
So I had a bit of a think about this one actually, and sort of changed my. One person I'd really like to meet. It's a bit of a weird one. He's a Victorian chap called Joseph Bazalgette, and I partly it's because he's got a great name.
Yeah, it's just the name alone.
And he probably had one of these
Moustaches.
Crazy moustaches.
So I'd like to sort of see that and meet that. But he's a sort of public health hero because he sort of sorted out sewage.
Was he the guy
London.
with who discovered cholera with the water pump?
No,
or is
that's
that a different
John
guy?
Snow. That's a different one.
Right.
Who I guess a lot of public health people would say who would want to meet John Snow, and I probably would like to meet him.
Yeah.
But Bazalgette is a bit of an unsung hero. He took London's
disgusting underground, yeah.
and was very ahead of his time in the engineering he used to sort of channel that away.
Yeah,
and,
so
and
literally
get rid of
took its crap and moved it.
Yeah, and I think he'd have a lot of interesting stuff to say about our sewage problem that we've got now.
Yeah, imagine dropping him off today and just being like,
So
how do we better move this crap?
So what do we do, Bazalgette, is we just put it in the river.
Yeah.
We've not really come much further than that, as it goes.
Well, that's what he got us away from doing.
Is it, yeah?
Well, yeah, no, he built London Sewers Network, and he did cunning things like build them in a teardrop shape so that when the flow's not very fast and it's quite slow, it still is running quite fast at the bottom of the teardrop.
Because it's like the force through.
So it's still got quite a decent speed, even though there's not a lot of volume. So he did lots of things.
Just simple things like that.
I love that.
Which is going to just fill up at the bottom.
I love like the ingenuity that goes into like
I would
that.
for thousands of years not get past a circular pipe.
No,
I'd be like, no, never would I think of the teardrop.
Someone goes,
nobody would have done
No.
it. But
right,
he
we
did.
really need to move away from circle. Why are we doing that?
I'd be like square. I'd make it worse. Let's do a triangle upside down.
Have we considered no pipes? So there's number one. Who'd be number two?
Number two, I would at the moment. I'd really like to sit down with Keir Starmer. I'm quite left leaning, and I'd like to know. Are you just being really cautious, or do you have some other ideas?
Because
he
doesn't tend to say much, does he?
Yeah, he seems to be feeling like he's holding everything quite close and being very careful.
What I'm hoping is he's not saying a lot because he doesn't have to.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
I think if he keeps not saying a lot, is the election next year or the year after when we actually have to do one?
Probably some point next year. Yeah.
I think if he's still quiet then I'm concerned. But for now. Yeah. They're just destroying themselves, aren't they?
He just seems to...
That's true, yeah. He doesn't have to work very hard. Yeah.
He doesn't have to work very hard to oppose them because they do it themselves.
Yeah.
But he just seems a bit like Jezza was like, I don't know, he had like a character, didn't he? There was a character there. And even Boris, there's the characters there. They're like the arch opposites, aren't they? Yeah. But for Keir, it's just a bit like... I don't know, a leader to me has something else with them.
I tell you what, though,
and it's just like, where's the charisma? You know what I mean? Because you need to win people over, don't you?
But have we had a bit too much of
charisma? Yeah, that's the other argument.
That's what I'm hoping.
Isn't it?
Yeah. We've had a lot of charisma, and it's
that's
it's
what
only
people
got
are saying.
so far.
Yeah. No, that's totally right as well.
Do with a bit more grown-up sort of sense.
That's a great choice. Yeah, get to the bottom of Keir Starmer.
Okay, so we've got Keir Starmer, and we've got the first guy was
Joseph Bazalgette.
Bazalgette. Jesus Christ, that's
his surname's amazing.
Bazalgette. He needs to be a rock star.
You have to change your name.
Bazalgette.
Sam Bazalgette. Yeah. And then the third and final person to top it off.
At one point, I was thinking, somebody else talked about David Attenborough, and that would be a really cool choice. I'd be really interested in that. But a more personal one is Lance Armstrong. So he was the, Tour de France winner many times over, one of my sort of boyhood heroes. I watched him riding the Tour de France winning, and then was gutted, of course, when he
got caught.
Turns out to be a massive cheat.
Did he get caught? Did he get caught, or did he just admit it, or did he admit it because he got caught?
He got admitted because he got caught.
Wasn't it like tested and developed, and they went back and tested old samples, and they were like, "Wow, it's absolutely riddled."
There was some people owned up and said, actually, there's all this stuff going on that team.
So why
they've got bags of blood and stuff in the back and things.
Are you a cyclist yourself then?
So I've always been a keen cyclist. I'm not on anywhere near that. Hobby cyclist. But so he was someone that I thought was fantastic, and he partly why I was interested in cycling, and I'd watch it on the telly. But
he was a character. I mean, obviously he cheated, but he was almost like an MJ you know, Muhammad Ali figure, where he was that large, and he was like a, you know, a proper competitor, wasn't he? Like some of his quotes are still, I mean, they've obviously been dampened a little bit by his, but I get what you're saying, like he was inspirational.
I'd like to find out why he did it and what the pressures were, and, you know,
yeah, like what forced him to go down that.
Was it just purely
route?
naked ambition, or was there sort of like, well, I've just got to do this because everybody is doing it?
I'd probably lean towards that. Probably if he's thinking everyone else is doing it, and if I don't, I won't be able to. It's like that. Yeah. That like anxiety of if I don't
want to get left behind.
I won't win.
Because he had this great story of, you know, he got cancer, came back from cancer,
back after cancer, didn't
won
he? Yeah.
tours again, and maybe that's partly what pushed him if he wasn't already doing the drugs, which he might have been.
Yeah. Well, that's fascinating.
That's a great three. And it's very different as well from the traditional type of answer we get, I think.
Some people usually go like comedian, actor, scientist, you know, like three very different angles.
They
just sort of a bit personal.
Yeah, they follow a kind of methodology. No, but I like that one.
I like it too.
Good. And the final one we asked before we get into the main meat of the episode is, what's the worst job you've ever had?
You'll never go back. If someone offers you $1 million tomorrow, you go, no thanks, I'm not going.
I'm not doing it.
I haven't had that many jobs, to be really honest. I know I'm sort of like, went to uni, quite liked it at university, did a master's, did a PhD.
So just hopped off.
Stayed in university. So I've never really hopped off. I mean, I've had jobs around the side. So my worst job is actually my PhD. I'm going to class that as a job. And it was awful in some ways because of the subject I was doing. So, and the practicalities of it. I was looking at taking waste materials, one of which was sewage sludge, and then working with that to try and carbonise it and make it into a useful sort of adsorbent that you could use to absorb pollution. All that side of it was great, but it was just, we had to go and collect lots of sewage sludge.
That's literally go and pick up shite.
From several different you know, wastewater treatment plants around the country. And so our road trips weren't that exciting. We come back with canister of this stuff, and some of it was raw sludge, which is the stuff before it's been through the sort of digestion process. So it's sort of like literally horrible.
Bit potent.
Very potent. But then we had to sterilise it, and we used to do that in this lab with an autoclave, so it's like a massive pressure cooker, really. And, you know, so that made it safe, and you think it'd make it sort of smell better, but it just made it smell different and
funky,
awful, funky.
But still
and
the same.
It stank out the lab, and we had to install pipes up to the.
Once you sterilise it, it's like it's still shite, but it's not quite shite now. It's funky shite.
Funky shite. A terrible 70s band.
Some punk band from the 70s.
It's funky, but it's shite. You know what I mean? It's funky shite. No, I like it. But
you literally in your PhD, the field work was collecting waste. People think, glamorous scientist.
Afraid not mine. No.
You were in a fancy lab doing fancy stuff.
And then we got it back to the lab, and when we did stuff with it, you know. But then I remember a lot of pipetting. So we'd make this carbon, and then we'd have to test it with lots of different like solutions of pollution.
Was there much borking going on
and stuff to just? So that was just hard work.
Yeah, I'd have got a mask with an air freshener in the front of me or something. Just left it like that.
Oh, it didn't smell bad then. That was all right by then. Once you got it carbonised, it was fine. But it was then just like thousands of
loads
bottles
of
of
those
jars
plugs
that you
in
had
the
to
labs.
weigh out and then pipette liquids into all by hand. It was like,
so you wouldn't go back to doing that field work?
No, it took me ages. Partly for that reason, I got interested. It's when I got interested in air pollution. It was a sort of like bit of a deviation.
Got yourself out of it.
I suppose that's a natural question then to what we normally ask, because what we ask after this kind of section is like how you got into your field. So it's like you said, it was like environmental pollution and then like smoking, vaping and stuff. So I suppose that's like a natural segue then into how you went from your PhD into that. So did you go into like a postdoc from your PhD in like environmental effects?
So I got it was called a research officer job then, which was a type of a low level postdoc position. And that was before I'd finished the PhD, but then I was then working on this air quality stuff.
On so the basically, side, sort of overlapped.
My professor, one of his other interests was air quality, and particularly indoors, and he had some consultancy work going. So so this was paid work.
You're not going to say no to that, are you?
Exactly, yeah. And involved a bit of travel, so we were able to go to other countries, sample some air pollution, measure that, bring it back to the lab, do some testing on the pollution levels, and that was a lot more interesting than my PhD.
I can imagine.
And it earned a bit of money. So that
winner
made the PhD sort of take
what was like kind of the main aims of that type of research in like measuring air pollution? Like, what were you trying to find from that?
So that particular set of projects, the concern at the time, this is way back in the sort of like early 90s. One of the concerns at the time was, what's the shift to unleaded fuel going to do? So if we move to unleaded fuels, are we then going to see a change in fuel composition that then just means we get a whole different bunch of pollutants out the back of the exhaust? So we'll get rid of the lead, which was a major health problem and needed sorting.
All other types of bits and bobs that are going to cause other problems.
Yeah. So one of the worries was you might start putting in more benzenes and things like that would then come out of exhaust and are carcinogens and are then going to cause pollution problems. So we were going to various countries that had different fuel compositions to sort of see what were the levels of pollution and whether that affected it.
Brilliant.
Wow.
That's so good. So was there any research then on the back of that, like what would the different types of like hydrocarbon stuff in the air, what causes that had on humans, or was that kind of where your research stopped, or did you go further?
There was already sort of good information and understanding about what hydrocarbons were problematical in the air.
Yeah.
So things like benzene, things like formaldehyde, and some of these sort of carcinogenic pollutants. There's another one that we looked at, 1,3-butadiene, which was again something that you find in exhaust. And the worry was that, mucking about the fuel composition is going to result in more of those, and we know those are harmful.
Ah, right, okay, so it was just kind of measuring. So what did you find then? What was the...
So we found that, that as you started to change the fuel composition, a lot of the ways refineries were doing that was to increase the proportion of fuel that was then susceptible to creating things like benzene in the exhaust. And that if you weren't using some of the more, I suppose you called it, sophisticated or expensive refining techniques, which we were doing in Europe, but which they weren't, say, doing in
India,
South America or India or countries like that, then you might end up with increased levels of those pollutants.
That's so interesting. So go on.
I was just going to say, when you mentioned carcinogenic, so when there's an increased level of those pollutants, you see increased levels of certain cancers then, do you, in those countries due to that, or is that correlation not so clear?
We weren't able to sort of show that, no, because it's small numbers. So with some of these carcinogens, you're talking things like leukemia. They're not that common.
They're not that prevalent.
So you're not going to see a massive change.
An uptick or something.
But we know that if you increase the levels of those pollutants in the air, then you will see some increase.
Yeah.
Is that still kind of the case nowadays then, or is it kind of changed a bit more, improved?
I mean, vehicles are very different now to how they were back in the 90s.
They were more cleaner, efficient.
They're just a lot cleaner and more efficient. So the emissions that come off a modern car, I don't know, are probably, don't hold me to the figures, maybe 20 times, maybe more, sort of efficient and cleaner than
the 90s.
Coming in the 90s. And if you go back further than that, it's even more. So they've cleaned up tremendously. And things like the catalytic converters that we've got in them now, mop up a good chunk of the emissions.
Wow. This is proper left field and like not what we had on the question at all, but it just came to me. So like maybe months ago now, we've been going a long time doing this.
Yeah, man.
But so a couple of months ago, we're nearly dead. That's your famous phrase. So we've been going. That's not where I wanted to go. We did an episode a few months ago. It was kind of about electric cars and sustainability on them. So just like came to me while we're on cars, because you do a lot of work with. Is it sustainability as well?
I'm interested in that. Yeah.
So one of the things we got onto was there's this kind of popular idea floating around that between whether it's good to just buy an electric car, get rid of your old car, or keep your old car going and stop a new car getting built. Yeah. To that old question, kind of what is... So we kind of found that there's a crossover point.
Yeah.
Is that kind of like... Where would you stand on that? Where would you weigh in, I suppose?
I mean, it depends on the emissions that you're worried about. I think that's the key thing. So if you're worried about the sort of climate change emissions, your CO2 emissions, etc., then there's a more of an argument about that sort of life cycle of the product. Yeah. You're putting a lot of energy into building the car, and therefore CO2 emissions coming out of the building of a new electric car. And then in that situation, maybe it's better to hold on to your old car, even if it is a diesel. When you're talking about if you like, toxic air pollutions that are going to do immediate damage to people's health, then electric cars
are obviously the winner.
The winner. But yeah, there's this problem with that sort of balance with the CO2. You've got these air pollution definite gain, but how much are we worried about the CO2
That's such an interesting point, because in all the research we did for that episode and since, I've never seen that kind of like reasoning put forward. It's always it's like it's better or it's worse. But obviously nothing in life is ever that kind of
not
dichotomous.
That simple,
No, but so it's such an interesting take. Like obviously it depends, and
And we were looking at as well, like most electric cars are fueled through coal.
Well, especially
well, there's more gas, but
more gas is
but it's still a fossil fuel powered. I mean, we're getting better. I mean, I think it's nearly 50% or about 50% of our fuel is coming from.
So we've got it that low.
Renewables and nuclear and biomass. You put all those together.
Oh wow!
It's about 50%.
I didn't know it was that high.
Most of the rest is gas, but it is coming down.
Yeah, because I suppose 20 years ago it would have been like 90% fossil fuel, wouldn't it? Yeah, easy. Oh. Wow. So should we get on to the vaping?
Yeah. Well, so you obviously work in air pollution. So when did your research move on to like tobacco vaping? Is that more recently?
No, that's been quite a long time. Part of the work that we were doing in other countries as well wasn't just looking at the vehicle emissions. There was also some interest in indoor air quality at the time. So when we were in South America and places like that, measuring air pollutants outdoors, we also did quite a lot of work in restaurants where we would go to restaurants, and while we had our air pollution monitoring outside, we would have some food but measure indoors as well. And we were interested in tobacco smoke indoors, as it was, and how much that was sort of transmitted around the environment, what the levels were in different countries.
Because we saw from your profile when we were researching it that you had an impact on the 2007 legislation in the UK? Was that the ban smoking indoors?
Exactly, yes.
So how did that come about, like influencing that type of thing?
So when I was at Manchester Met, I was already got interested in tobacco smoke, and we'd already been doing some of that work. And at the time, there was this big sort of debate, and it was in the Houses of Commons and things. They were debating, do we just have a sort of like blanket ban on smoking in public places, or do we have sort of hybrid situations where they were suggesting there'd be different types of pubs and they'd be labelled differently for customers.
Like a smoking pub.
This is a smoking pub where smoking is allowed everywhere.
In a pub or something like that. Yeah.
Smoking allowed, or is this a pub with a fancy ventilation system, and then you could choose where you went.
Yeah.
But there was no evidence about whether any of those solutions made any difference.
So like passive.
Yeah, so it was just people throwing out ideas with no kind of...
with not a lot of evidence. Yeah. So we did some work where we had a PhD student who would go around pubs. Great PhD project.
You know what? I'm in the wrong place here.
So you were collecting waste. We're sitting at a computer twiddling our thumbs, and this guy was going around pubs.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to
I have to say that. Yeah, she didn't have a consumables budget, put it that way. So we didn't pay for the beer.
Out of her own stipend, she had to get her own pints. You know what? It's a trade-off. I'll take it.
I'd have been fuming.
Imagine saying that to your partner, though. I've got to go to the pub again. That's 14 times in 2 weeks. Science.
You would be you'd be dead by the end of your PhD.
I actually think I'd be dead. I actually probably
you
would be dead.
wouldn't have got through the PhD. We've killed Ryan doing a PhD.
Yeah. He lives on through his research that he never finished.
Jeez. Okay, sorry.
No, it's good. So what we did is we built these kits. They were very homemade out of sort of toolboxes that we put these pumps in and various filters and absorbents to collect tobacco smoke. And we put those behind the bar and in the bar and in any non-smoking rooms that they had. And we did that in a whole bunch of pubs. And we're able really to show that having a non-smoking area made very little difference
because
to the
of the transmission of the smoke.
It's so mobile.
Over a few hours, it ends up being everywhere.
The particles get everywhere. The nicotine didn't travel as far because that gets absorbed to everything. That's what made your clothes smell and all of that.
Yeah.
Wallpapers go yellow, don't they?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Have you seen those like famous pictures of like smoking areas in airports? You've seen it, and it's like a glass pane, and like they take a picture of the roof, and it's, you know, like that white paneling.
Yeah.
And you can see how it's like just pure white, and then as soon as it goes in the room, it's like a dark yellow.
Oh, lads,
it's crazy.
When I was working on building sites years ago in my summers and that, you could tell a smoker's house from a non-smoker's house
just because of the colour of the walls.
You'd rip the wallpapers and like there'd be stains on the wall. You know, like of like, what is it? Is it nicotine that stains?
It's not just nicotine. There's a whole bunch of other sort of semi-volatile compounds that are there as sort of aerosol droplets, often in or as vapor at first, and then they condense onto anything.
Yeah,
and literally damage the walls.
Yeah,
and
tar.
If a standard wall needs 2 or 3 coats, it'd be 4. You know, to literally get rid of the stains.
Yeah,
that's insane.
So especially if you were trying to like go with a light colour on top of these like yellowish stains, you'd have to. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, it'd probably be really hydrophobic, so it would probably sort of stop the paint sticking because it's so oily.
You'd have problems like that. You'd be scraping or sanding it all off. It'd be.
Yeah, it sounds like a nightmare.
That put me off from a young age. I was like, I don't want to smoke. My house will be ruined.
Yeah,
exactly.
Care nothing about you. I don't care about me. Me wall had the decorating bill through the roof at 16.
So you put these things in different rooms, found no difference really. The smoke still travels.
Yeah,
and still.
So that was sort of, you know, evidence that these sorts of ideas weren't going to make a big difference,
tossed about in
and that you
Parliament.
needed to do something.
It needed to be
sort of drastic.
Yeah, it needed to be no smoke basically, or kind of, as you were saying, maybe an alternative as well. This is a smoking place, because you can get them, can't you?
I mean, the trouble with the just smoking place was, and I think this is why the ban was eventually put in, was that it doesn't help with staff. So people still got to work in that environment. And
so then you'd only be able to hire smokers essentially if you wanted to keep it like
moral.
Yeah.
But even that's sort of immoral, because you're then encouraging something that you know is unhealthy. So as an employer, what's your duty of care or whatever, you know?
So did that study then with the student directly impact the decision on what was made, and obviously the evidence would have been taken into account?
Policymakers were interested in that and interested in that lack of impact of some of these solutions. Yeah.
Wow. Because me and you were talking then, because the Rishi Sunak's just brought in the under 14 smoke-free generation sort of discussion. What's your take on? Have you had any impact on that? Have you spoke to people who have had impact on it? Has it been more something? You know, what's your take?
I mean, it's come out of the Khan review, which was commissioned by the government to sort of look at smoking solutions, and obviously that's something that the government's picked up on.
Yeah.
I didn't feed sort of directly into that, but I know people, and I've spoken to people in local authorities, etc., who've very strongly sort of pushed for this. And there's been knocking around for quite a while now, this idea of how do we push smoking rates down that last little bit. You know, at the moment they may be about 14%, but how do we get it down?
It's already dropped a lot, hasn't it?
Oh, hugely. You know, if you think back to the First World War, everybody smoked in the 70s, you know.
Wasn't it
60%
the First World War, like, it was like a key essential? They shipped cigarettes out to like everyone in the trenches.
And that's probably why when you're saying then, you could still have, I suppose, a pub which would open and say we're a smoking pub, but they'd lose loads of business because most people, even if they're drinkers, they don't smoke anymore.
Yeah. Not now. No.
Yeah, so they wouldn't go in it.
Things have changed a lot.
Which is ironic. They go and get bladdered, but they don't want to go in to get the smoke. You know what I mean?
No. We've. I mean, when that research was going on, I don't know, smoking rates maybe 25-30%.
Yeah.
You know, so that's sort of almost halved.
So I suppose then, because they're making like this cut on the cigarette side, cutting that down. A natural question people have, because you do work as well with like alcohol related things as well. So a natural question people have is, what is the difference then? Like, so to say if someone said, why don't we have a drink-free generation?
Yeah.
Is that kind of, is there more kind of, I'm trying to think of the ways to phrase it.
Why would they pick cigarettes, you're trying to say?
Yeah, like,
why are they the bad guy?
That's exactly what I'm trying to say. Thank you, sir.
I mean, there's a couple of answers to that. One is that I suppose most people would say they are still our biggest cause of preventable death. So if you look at that
by like a big way?
Not as much as it used to be, because we've cut smoking down so much, but there's still a sort of legacy of effects still coming through the system of people who used to smoke. But it still remains our largest source of preventable death and outstrips alcohol deaths, etc. So it's bigger than that. I think the other reason is a bit more of a moral one. Smoking, we know, will cause mortality in about 50% of people that use it as advertised, if you like. So if you use the product as you're supposed to do, it's going to kill about 50% of people.
If you smoke 20 a day, basically.
If you smoke regularly over a lifetime.
So
not as a little occasional.
Yeah, because obviously there's a safe amount of. I mean, there's obviously not, but I mean,
we don't know exactly what level of alcohol is safe, but yeah, it doesn't kill 50% of people who drink alcohol.
Yeah,
through their lifetimes.
So
we're sat here drinking some now.
Well, of course.
Yeah. I'm pretty confident it is not. I haven't got a 50% chance of dying because I've consumed alcohol all my life.
That's quite a wild stat, to be fair, and it's quite what's the word? Convincing, I think is the word I'm trying to think of.
Because I've got a bit of a weird take on it, Ivan. I kind of don't agree with it because I just think it's like I 100% get the science of it. I've come from a science background, but like the way to convince people to not do something isn't to ban it in my eyes. It's like I suppose it'd be like gambling's a big problem.
Yeah.
So we just ban gambling, and if I know gambling. Debts aren't like high, and it's a different ballgame. It's to do with getting into debt. People do get into issues with it, or drinking, for example. But like for me, it's like if someone wants to smoke, as long I fully accept the pub one and indoors, because you are affecting other people.
Yeah.
As soon as you impact other people, hospital, anything else, okay, no, you can't do that now. The same way there's a speed limit, not because we don't want to stop you going 100 mile an hour, but if you go with them speeds, you might kill someone else, and they had nothing to do with that. They didn't want to go that fast. But like we're sort of stopping a generation, in my eyes, having a bit like a free will, if you like. It's like it's bad free will. It's not something I'd recommend they do. I don't smoke myself, but if a 13-year-old wants to pick up a cigarette and smoke, hopefully we've educated them where we're like, please don't do it. It's bad for you, but it's a free country. If you really want to do it, you can.
I mean, that is an argument against it. I accept that, and I do agree with that.
Yeah,
but
it's just
a point.
Yeah,
it's just this. I think it's about trying to we're trying to sort of stop the next generation becoming addicted to cigarettes.
Yeah.
When we know it's harmful for a large proportion of people that end up taking it up, and it is so hard to give up. Smokers find it incredibly difficult to give up.
Super addictive.
And so if you can stop children becoming addicted, then and one way is to make it difficult for them to get cigarettes. Yeah. And it's not perhaps fair to call it a ban in the sense of they still can smoke. If somebody gives them a cigarette, it's not illegal to smoke it. They're not allowed to buy them.
Yeah.
At that certain age, if you're born after that particular cut-off.
So I suppose then, a natural question we came on to, so when did your research on vaping kind of come into it? Because then I think the question follow-up we got from that is around
buying a vape then, if that can kill it essentially.
As well. So precisely for those reasons. So once, I was interested in tobacco and interested in the effect it was having people and how people quit, and then you started to see these e-cigarettes come onto the sort of market in the sort of mid to late 2000s, and it's never heard of these. What are these things? and what are they like? And are they a positive thing or are they a negative thing? And it just became a very interesting thing to
just like an
explore.
Extension of what you were already involved in.
Yeah.
So then, naturally, is this a positive or a negative thing?
It depends on who you are. So I think if you're a smoker,
then yes,
vapes are definitely a positive thing. It's by far, smoking is going to be much more dangerous than vaping. We know the various carcinogenic and cardiovascular problems, heart disease, strokes, all these sorts of things are massively increased with tobacco. But with nicotine and vaping, we know that the risks will be much lower.
Because I was watching it's on Netflix, you know the company Juul?
Yes.
Are you familiar with their rise and fall, as it were? It was an interesting watch as such, because they kind of showed that, as you say, it's not healthy, but for cigarette smokers it was good. But then they also made the point that it was a very easy tool to get children who weren't necessarily picking up tobacco cigarettes getting into vaping, because it's a much more appealing thing.
Yeah, the whole situation in the States and the UK and Europe has been completely different. So in America, it's a much more unregulated environment. you could buy Juul and similar devices, and the strengths of the nicotine aren't controlled, so they're much stronger devices and therefore more addictive. And America saw a big surge in youth vaping that we didn't really see till now.
That's what people were saying, wasn't it? They were like, with the Juuls, well, the common thing was, this is the best thing I've ever had since a cigarette, because the delivery was just
strong.
Yeah, it was like insane.
What worries me is obviously people, especially the younger generation, no one has a cigarette in their hand. You won't find an 18-year-old with a cigarette. Vapes. It's such a older generation thing. You go down a pub, you might see, an older gentleman or lady in the smoking area with a cigarette. But about 80%, just a random, what I think I'm seeing when I'm walking around, about 80% on a night out of younger people have vapes.
So when did that...
And they won't, they are every second. One of the big differences is you don't smoke, a cigarette constantly. People smoke vapes, and they're constantly got it in their mouth. And I wonder, is there things which we just don't know about vapes, in your opinion, Ivan, that in 10, 20 years we're going to be like, same way we were with cigarettes, so we're just like, wow, we didn't know this is what was going to happen.
I'm fairly hopeful. I won't say confident, but hopeful.
Because there's a lot of young people, if something bad does come, there's a lot of young people who are addicted to it.
There are, but I'm pretty hopeful and that it will be a lot less harmful than cigarettes. There are things potentially in e-cigarettes, in vapes, that might be concerning. There's flavourings. We know that they're fine as food additives, because that's what they mostly are.
But what happens when you heat them up?
But when you heat them up and inhale them into your lungs, we don't really know. And there's possibilities, and there's been some research that suggests that some of those products might be carcinogenic or might have other impacts. But the concentrations are going to be quite low. The exposures are less. People vape very intensively often when they're doing it, but they don't do it all day. And that
when they put it down, it's down for a few hours type thing.
Or days, or weeks. It's not as addictive as cigarettes. So young people, they'll use them a lot on a night out, perhaps, but then they won't necessarily come back to them.
Is the evidence point towards that? Like they'll have a week break?
I think sort of circumstantial, and I think that's an area we need to look at a bit more. Is how intensively do people use e-cigarettes?
Because maybe that's, as you say, maybe I've just, when I do mainly bump into vapes, it is down the pub on a night out and around restaurants and that, and people are using them intensively. But as you say, maybe during the week, it's something they put down for 5 days, or like a cigarette.
I think an ex-smoker might well use them a lot every day,
because it replaces that kind of
that need. And it is a need. It's a craving.
So
it's
going
really
back
intensive,
to like something you said before, then how like the US and Europe, the EU and us are different. Like how did we then? Because obviously our youth kind of epidemic, to put a word to it, took off later than theirs. How did that how did that come about? Like what was the difference there?
I think
for it to still happen.
Well, I mean it's these cheap disposable vapes that have come on the market in the last few years that have transformed access, if you like, to e-cigarettes. And before they were uncool sort of tanks.
Huge things.
People used to dish them, didn't they? And be like, oh, I wouldn't be caught smoking one of them.
Like if you went to the vape shop and got a little bit of liquid, you were like, you are a gimp.
Like people didn't.
Like you are a weird, like what are you doing, one of them big things. Whereas now, as you say, the amount of flavours, the colours themselves.
Yeah, people accessorise their vape to their outfit and stuff like that.
It's insane.
So I think and it's just become a bit of a cool trend, and there's sort of like various brands and things have got a name, and it's just run off, and hopefully maybe it'll be like a lot of sort of teenage trends, youth trends. It will peak and trough a bit.
Because the Monkeys.
The what?
The Monkeys. The band, man, in the 60s who rivaled the Beatles, but they died unlike the Beatles.
I did not get that reference.
Sorry,
I thought you on about the Arctic Monkeys. I was
sorry.
Then I was like, yeah, I get it. And then you went the 60s, and I was like, not a chance.
Sorry,
I was thinking of Spinners. Do you remember those?
Spinners.
They were crazy for a while.
Hopefully it'll be like Spinners. Come and go in a blink of an eye.
So is the regulation not as strong then in the UK on vapes compared to like tobacco cigarettes?
No, it's not at the moment. And I think that's where there's a lot of argument. So within public health, there's a massive sort of argument about e-cigarettes. Big chunks of public health sort of hate them and think they're terrible and they're awful. Other people are more supportive of them and think, no, they're really helpful for people to give up smoking, and that we mustn't sort of throw the baby away with the bathwater type idea. But sorry, I forgot what bit of the question was then.
The regulation.
The regulation.
Yeah. So the regulation is less severe. You know, for example, cigarettes have to be behind a sort of you can't display
see
them.
Yeah.
Whereas vapes, you can display them, so that makes it more accessible and attractive to kids. You know, we have banned advertising. You originally you could get vape adverts on TV and on things that did get banned, but it took a bit longer. So there's a few differences.
Is the less? It seems I'm not a smoker, so I don't go looking in vape aisles. But as you say, smoking's behind the barrier, and then when they open the barrier, there's all these red signs saying "don't," like, you know what I mean? These are bad. Is it a bit more like alcohol, where it's less "don't buy me"? Is vaping a bit more in the store? I'm not sure. I've never. You know the way you buy alcohol, it might have a few signs saying like "don't overdrink," be over 18, but there's no like big signs saying like
"you're gonna
alcohol
die,
will damage your liver" type thing. Whereas on cigarettes, there is.
Yeah, there's nothing like that. Yeah, there's no
With
real
vapes,
sort of like enforced promotion of a sort of like be careful around vapes message.
Is there any evidence with vapes potentially? Because what we tend to see is like people putting up that they have health complications or whatever. Is there any evidence with vapes that they cause certain diseases, different types of diseases that we may say from cigarettes, or is it kind of not enough evidence yet?
Not enough evidence yet, and I even hesitate to say yet, because we've had e-cigarettes for
quite a long time,
20 years pretty much. I think they were first invented in 2003. So I mean, they've not got popular until the last sort of 10 years. But we've got sort of 10, 15 years of quite a lot of people using them. If there was a massive health impact from using them, we probably would have started to have seen it. So it's not going to be huge, but there might be some underlying things that we haven't picked up on yet that would be longer term.
Yeah.
Because we had like little... this was just a personal experience of someone that I knew. Ended up with mouth cancer. Like the roof of the mouth.
Yeah, it's horrible.
And he was only 30 years old, and he was convinced he'd been smoking a vape since he was 18.
Right.
He was convinced it was the vape. But it was just anecdotal.
Could have been.
It's unlikely. But it could be. But it's unlikely.
It's unlikely.
It could have been something else. You know, non-smokers do get oral cancers.
Yeah.
A lot of oral cancers are smokers, but not all of them.
Not
It's the
all
same with lung cancer. Smoking's by far the biggest cause, but other people get lung cancer.
Get it.
So the smoke from a vape in the lung, it's the chemicals in the tobacco and what makes up the tobacco that is damaging to the lungs, not the actual smoke.
Well, yes and no. We're not still 100% sure about exactly what components
point.
You should have had 80 years to get this nailed down. You don't know what's going on.
Well,
there's about
that's
4,500 chemicals in cigarettes, and that's the trouble. But I mean, tobacco smoke as a whole is a proven carcinogen. That's been sort of agreed by the various sort of committees that look at that sort of stuff. There's lots of specific compounds in there that we're pretty confident that you find benzene in cigarettes, you find butadiene in cigarettes, you find other things in there in smoke from cigarettes. Yeah, they will be carcinogenic, but the exact things that are causing the lung cancer.
Yeah, like one thing that'll cause this over something else is a bit.
And things like heart disease as well. You know, why should smoking something into your lungs cause you to end up with heart disease? You know, and atherosclerosis, where your arteries block up, and what's the mechanism of that? That's still quite uncertain. But we know it happens, but we don't know exactly
the pinpoint
how it happens.
No, so interesting.
Have you looked into other smoking things like cigars or even like marijuana or like anything like that?
Less so, because they're less common. I mean, pipes and cigars are as harmful as tobacco in some respects, but cigar smokers never tended to inhale.
You just roll around the mouth.
They just sort of So it is still increasing the risk, but it's perhaps less than cigarettes.
The first time I had a cigar,
Never had one, man.
No, tell you what, it wasn't the first time. First time I did, I inhaled it, nearly died. And then the other side, we were at
Nearly died.
of all places, we went to the golf at the Open when it was in Liverpool, and our kid had just been on holiday, and he had 2 cigars, so he gave us one, and for some reason I just inhaled it. And what's funny, right? So we were stood between 2 tee boxes. Someone was trying to putt, someone was trying to tee off, and I'm about to die. I've just inhaled this cigar, something like that.
Coughing your guts
I'm trying not to cough up, because like Rory McIlroy's above a putt like this, and I'm like, I'm gonna die.
You're watching literally Rory McIlroy. What?
You spoiled the Open.
Yeah, I was like that. Oh no, Victor Hovland as well.
So I get like, what's in a cigar then that makes it so addictive type thing?
Is it still tobacco?
It's still tobacco. It's just
because you don't
consuming
inhale
tobacco. I think as well with cigars. I mean, I'm not an expert with cigars, but I think there's something about the sort of status or the ritual of it, and all of that rolled together cool, makes basically. It feel.
And if you're a big whiskey drinker, it helps. It enhances the flavour.
Because it does always look cool. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be promoting this.
This is not smoking advice.
Like cigarettes don't look cool to me. People always say, but cigars, I get it. Like type thing. I've never done one, but I get it. I get the glamour of it. You know what I mean?
So, and a question that's come to my mind as we've been talking, so obviously you looked at indoor pollution, mainly focused on like tobacco smoke or whatever. Have you ever done any research about just indoor pollution in general, and about what are the best ways to, because obviously more people spend time at home now, what are kind of the best ways to improve the air quality, like in your home, in your bedroom, that type of thing?
So one of the biggest risks is, especially in this country, is mould and damp. So damp homes lead to mould, and those moulds give off various spores, etc., that can then affect people's health. So I think that's probably one of the biggest concerns in the indoor environment is actually mould. Wow. Not some fancy pollutant, if you like, but good old fashioned
mould and damp.
Yeah. But I mean, there was a very famous case, just last year of a child that died from being in an excessively mouldy home, and that's an extreme example, but there's probably tens of thousands of homes where people have been affected.
Impactful is it on, say, someone's health who spends a lot of time indoors, potentially in like an unventilated room? Is there like evidence to suggest like you are at risk of certain things, or no?
No, it's hard to pin down those things.
Thing.
I mean, it's some excessively mouldy situations. Well, if you're asthmatic, then yes, we know that's going to be problematical. We know a certain amount about sort of carbon dioxide. So as that gets higher in the environment, it can cause sort of drowsiness and poor performance.
Because at John Moores, they've got them in all the rooms, haven't they? Carbon dioxide monitors.
Yeah.
Have you got one in your office?
It's in quite a lot of the rooms.
I don't know what it looks like. So probably have, but I don't know what it looks like.
It's a big thing on the wall, and it's got a light in the middle. It tells you is it the particulates in the air? Is that what it shows you?
No, it's showing the level of carbon dioxide, and they were brought in as a sort of COVID measure because they're a good indication of how well ventilated the space is. So if it's really well ventilated, the CO2 level, which we're producing loads by talking away and breathing.
Yeah.
If that builds up in a room because it's not well ventilated, then the CO2 level will go up. But then that also increases the risk of transmitting COVID virus or any other diseases.
I don't know if this is actually good or bad, if I might be letting more pollutants in. But I can't go to sleep if the window's closed because I feel like when I wake up, the air is full of bad air.
And it is in the sense of
it feels like damp and like not damp, you know what I mean? It just feels horrible. So I always, even if it's cold, I have to have it open.
No, that's a healthy thing to do.
It's just weird.
We have one of our first year modules. We give them some CO2 monitors to go and put around their homes and their bedrooms and see what happens. And if they have an unventilated bedroom where you've got a person there sleeping overnight, windows shut, doors shut, the levels get quite high. And it's not going to kill you, but it's a stuffy environment then that you might not sleep as well. It's not as restful. I
notice it in like when I'm in my office in uni, I'll get in at 10, it's all nice clean, window's been open, the pitch is nice and green, and it'll get to about 7 o'clock in the evening, and I'm like falling asleep like this, and I'll look up and it's just red. I'm like, this is probably contributing to my drowsiness. I get outside and I'm like, oh, I'm actually not that
Feel
tired.
drunk.
Yeah. There's no oxygen left in this room. I'm just inhaling carbon dioxide.
So, Ivan, then, as obviously a person who's researched vaping, the effects on public health, what are the main things? I'm not sure if you're going to experience in other areas of public health like diet, and then what are the main things someone can do to not die? Basically,
to not die.
To not have any issues. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, okay. I mean, number one is the smoking, because it is our
Do not smoke a vape.
biggest
Don't
cause
even
of
smoke
preventable
vape.
death. Oh, and I personally, and I might get shot by public health people,
Wouldn't say no.
I wouldn't say no to vaping if you're a smoker. Vape.
Yeah.
And that's actually not very controversial. I'd even say that I wouldn't be too concerned about people experimenting with vapes, provided it doesn't become a really sort of long-term thing, and you do a lot of it. You know,
If you're a casual vapor of a
yeah.
weekend.
I mean,
or...
I'd much prefer my kids to have experimented with vapes than experiment
cigarettes.
with tobacco.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that. I mean, I think things like alcohol we know is harmful and does cause a lot of harm. You know, we've got a team here that specialise in nightlife violence, and
Yeah.
Because I
that's a
suppose
big
it's
harm,
because it's
yeah.
not just a harm to yourself; it's the other things that come.
Alcohol
along with
makes you
it.
do daft stuff. Yeah,
We've all been there.
Ryan knows.
Yeah, I've been there many times.
and then you forget about it, which is sort of stop.
Yeah, then that's
if
it.
you
But everyone-
remembered, you might not do it again.
Everyone else remembers.
That's the thing which makes it great. You forget about the things you've done.
Until someone rings you up and goes, "You were a knob," and you go, "Well, I don't remember, so it's all right." Yeah.
So I mean, I think alcohol. You know, it's not don't drink alcohol, but
Don't abuse it.
Yeah.
there's harmful levels of alcohol consumption that you need to sort of stay beyond. And then we're increasingly learning more about diet and the problems of obesity, and it's not just being overweight, it's also the type of food that you're eating, and
Like processed foods and stuff.
processed foods, excess sort of sugar and carbs, the wrong sort of fats.
Yeah.
We eat too much animal fat, and different people handle it differently, and that's one of the complexities.
Yeah.
Like it's not a one size fits all
No.
solution.
It's a big thing, especially. I mean, we're definitely not experts in it. But
Definitely not.
Yeah, we like. There's a lot more these days on high protein diet, high fiber diet. Like 30, 40 years ago, it seems everyone was just eating a high volume of carbohydrates during the 80s and 90s. But if you go back to my granddad's generation or my nan, there's a lot more fresh protein, vegetables, potatoes, but they didn't really have refined processed white bread or all those type of glucose spiking sugars, if you like that.
And we've been encouraged to do this by the food industry.
Yeah.
They've had excess of certain stuff, so they've discouraged us from eating butters and fats, and encouraged us to eat sort of marge and sugars. And
Because isn't margarine essentially just hydrocarbons? Isn't that where it comes from? It's derived from, in a way.
well, yeah, but I mean, but then we're all hydrocarbons,
Well,
and so
yeah.
are the plants that we eat. And so being hydrocarbon isn't
No,
a
I
problem.
mean,
but if it's a very processed,
that's what I mean,
refined,
yeah,
Because there was as you say, there was everything was no fat, 0% fat, but high sugar.
yeah,
And people
that's
bought
sort of
it, something with
counterproductive,
18 grams of sugar because it had no fat in.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, are you actually doing yourself any
Yeah.
favours by
You're probably
avoiding, by having a 0% fat diet?
Yeah.
You need fat, you need good fats in your life.
You do.
But
But then
But still having loads
it
of
depends
processed
on the
sugar.
person, I think. And what I think we're realising is that we need to sort of maybe start personalising diet.
individualised.
So, I've done one
diet.
of these things where they assess your tolerance to sugar, tolerance to fats, etc. And because I've got diabetes that's rife in my family, and I think,
okay.
I'm really worried about my sugar intake. But it turns out I'm quite good at handling sugar.
Okay.
Ah,
I'm
right.
not so good at handling animal fats. And
Okay.
so that's what I need to work
Yeah.
on. But somebody else, it might be
The
that no,
opposite.
they
Yeah.
need to be working on the
Well,
sort of carb intake.
This leans into a certain area that I quite enjoy, because even though I'm machine learning, AI kind of research, I work a lot in healthcare. So with my supervisors, they're moving into digital twins type things.
Yep.
You're familiar with digital twins ish?
I know your supervisor, so yeah.
Oh, do you know,
Yeah,
do you know Ivan?
Yeah, we've been working
Ivan,
on a project
Ivan.
together.
Oh, which project?
So it's a Horizon 23 bid that he's been working on, looking at sort of cardiovascular impacts and air pollution. So I'm interested in the air pollution bit, and he's
cardiovascular
he's on
and
the
machine
sort
learning.
of like the machine learning in terms of the impacts on health.
What a small world.
Indeed.
It is. Yeah, so I work with Ivan. So, like, a lot of Ivan and Sandra, the pet. So we work a lot with so I look like clustering, which makes sense because a lot of the stuff I've focused on quite initially, and I believe is probably the way forward for medicine, is like a patient like me approach where we can use past modelling to give someone more personalised treatment instead of just being, you meet X, Y, and Z conditions.
So here's X, Y, Z treatment.
Here's the treatment.
Standard treatment,
Whereas it's you meet X, Y, and Z condition. However, this little variable over here puts you closer to this treatment plan, and then doing it that way. Like, I do feel that is...
So what you mean, like, with the diet? Like,
that's what I mean. Like, it seems to be kind of this, like, thought process that is becoming more prevalent. I see it in a lot of places where it's personalisation is the new...
Well, it's the complexity of the individual, isn't it? You can't just paint a brush like, okay, you have diabetes, so there's one diabetes treatment for all 1,000 of you. And it's like, well...
And that sort of works at a population level.
Exactly. When you look at the wider stats, you go, oh, this treatment's worked. But there's always people who are like, this has hurt me.
Yeah.
But, for example, coming from nothing to a blanket approach is a great step forward. Like, I've got a good friend who's diabetic, and he was telling me, he was like a couple of years before I got diagnosed diabetes, you essentially got a leaflet that was like, you can eat one jacket spud a day and eventually you will die. There was no there was no management of treatment for diabetes, essentially. So he was like, years ago what it used to be, you just used to one jacket spud a day, try keep all right, and eventually you're gonna die. It's gonna kill you. Yeah. So so this is what I mean. But it feels like now we've gone to that step where it's a blanket thing, improved treatments, and it's like, for me, the next big chasm is having that personalised approach, and then trying to do it digitally as well and automate it so people can get it quicker. I think is the thing. Sorry, that was very off topic, but that's where it came from.
Really interesting,
I suppose one of the final questions then for us is, what's next for you? So I suppose you've just mentioned the Horizon project you're working in. So what's that focused on specifically in terms of the air pollution?
It's trying to understand the impact of particular air pollution around Europe, because it differs. So one of the teams is in Poland, and they have a very sort of different problem with air pollution, sort of Polish smog. It's much more sort of traditional, sort of from coal burning and winter sort of atmospheric conditions that lead to it all getting being concentrated, and then other parts of Europe it's much more sort of photochemical smogs that's driven by sunlight and vehicle emissions that then react to form pollutants, and then you've got other bits of Europe that's affected by Saharan dust and things. So it's about, but we know all of those things have an impact, but it's how do they then impact on
the wider
on particularly people's cardiovascular health and heart disease and
stuff like that's attacks. So interesting, because as you say, it's stuff that you wouldn't necessarily consider. Cause as you say, we spend a lot of time in Liverpool, but we'd have better quality of air if we lived in the countryside. It's stuff like that which you don't consider impacts your health, which really does. Which I find so interesting.
And then the sort of the modelling side of that and the digital twinning side is trying to be able to sort of do something more useful with it and predict things and encourage change.
Because as you say, it's all well and good having the prescriptive knowledge and knowing this does this, but then it's like, how can we use that to get in front of it type thing? Exactly. I find that so interesting.
And we must, I mean, I don't know how well we are, how trained we are at measuring deaths from pollution, but it feels hard to measure, kind of. I mean, obviously we can measure pollutants in the air, but someone might die of a problem which come from living in a polluted area. Because it happened 10 years ago, we just say, oh, they died of, X condition. I wonder how many people actually die. True figures, because we're probably underestimating it of actual air pollutants.
There are always estimates, and for the UK the estimates vary from sort of 25,000 people a year up to sort of 40,000 people a year dying from air pollution unnecessarily, and it's really hard to pin down.
It's like when you're talking about
very uncertain.
That's a massive confidence interval.
So we know within about 15,000
give or take 10 million people.
Because that's like you're saying, there's so many other things that affect this.
Because it could be, as you say, it could be a confounder. It's not a reason you've died, but it's harder to.
So that's why it's been. But recently, there's been sort of cases. There was a case a few years ago of a young girl that died of asthma. Her mother really campaigned for that to go to an actual sort of coroner's inquest and be actually put down as a death from air pollution, not just a death from asthma. I remember
that,
And that's the first time that's happened, is that we've actually got
a death on a death certificate of air pollution.
This is because it is air pollution.
Wow. As you say, it probably does happen a lot more, but it's going to go down as the primary visible condition, not what has triggered the particular event potentially.
Exactly, yeah. So it's always estimates, but you know, we're confident and within these wide margins that it does have a big impact
confident.
On health. I mean, the thing with public health though is we're always interested in that sort of population level. You know, confidence intervals can be quite big, and we still know that it's a major problem
because you're capturing the demographic at large. Essentially, you're not trying to be so specific, so it doesn't really matter as much.
Not as much.
That's what really annoys me about population level work. Like, obviously it's got to be done, you need to know general patterns, but like, we know that when we have more green space that people live better lives, so they'll put a park in a deprived area and they go that'll and it's just like, on the ground this doesn't work. If you're from them areas, it just doesn't work. But when you're looking at it from the hawk's eye, you're like, this works, look at the data. It's like, go and ask the people in the area, this park's done nothing to help them. Like, do you know what I'm saying? But it's like,
it's hard to see the effects being very tangible.
It's like it's like, I'm not saying you shouldn't look at population level stuff, you've got to.
I know what you're
but it's just like trying to like pinhole it down to the individual level. It's got to be more personalised. You can't just, paintbrush the air. You know what I'm saying?
So, other than the Horizon project, anything else with yourself?
Well,
I mean, trying to move into?
Well, I've been very tied up with my new role and teaching and stuff.
Is there anything else that you've been particularly interested in?
It's the vaping side. So I'm really interested in what we were talking about before. How much do people use them throughout the day? Is it something that people are addicted to and puffing all the time, or is it something that they can put down and leave and just sort of use on a very occasional basis? And I haven't seen much research on that, and that's something I'd really like to explore.
That's a nice. Well, as you say, that's a very nice thing to answer, because if there is again a difference in smoking habit, but not also just what's being smoked, how it's being smoked, that's a huge finding and a way to model that particular thing.
Definitely.
So interesting.
It makes a big impact on the actual outcomes, is how much they're being used.
Because if most people worry about them. Because as you say, most people who smoke cigarettes don't become casual cigarette smokers, they become smokers.
I want to smoke at least like 3, 4 or 5.
Whereas if a vape is a bit more like how most people drink, which is casual drinking. On a Friday night, they have a couple of pints with their friends, then they'll go 3 weeks, then they'll have a glass of wine at a meal, and they might go a couple of months later have that one night where they do get really drunk. And then if vaping's like that, you can't see it being less of a problem. But as you say, if you do these surveys or whatever, and it is a habit, that could be.
We've got reason to think vaping might be like that. I mean, we know that there are things in cigarettes that combine with nicotine to actually enhance that sort of addiction effect. Wow. So it's not just the nicotine, it's other things in tobacco that enhance it. And they're obviously not present in e-cigarettes. It's just the nicotine on its own. So we'd expect it to be less addictive, less powerful. But
even still, just from
exactly how that manifests, we're not sure.
Even just from like a personal level, like when menthols used to be a thing, I used to enjoy a menthol on a night out.
A cigarette?
Yeah, a little menthol cigarette. It's a minty cigarette. Like, I used to feel
minty.
They were right. I'm not even gonna lie now. Yeah, they were unbelievable. However,
never that, lads. I can't smoke.
I used to wake up after a night of minty cigarettes, right, and I'd be horrendous. Like, I'd feel awful. Yeah. But like, I've done an occasional night out, I've had a vape, and the feeling the next day is just. So it's not doing like those.
So many unpleasant things.
Yeah.
I mean, the menthol cigarettes. One reason why that they were banned.
It's because of that.
It's because they were really attractive to people, because they were a very easy way into smoking, because it's quite easy.
Because I used to like social smoke when I used to go out to drink, and then as soon as they got rid of menthol cigarettes, I never picked one up ever again.
Yeah.
What was so bad about menthol?
No, menthol was great.
That's what was so bad about it.
It
was great. It meant kids and things could smoke, and it wasn't as hard work. It wasn't. Something about the menthol made it easy.
In the filter, you used to have this little thing you used to pop, and
Yeah.
And then like when
Why haven't I seen these? Lad?
So when you used to smoke, it used to be like minted, so it used to taste nice essentially.
Oh, okay.
So, but then as soon as they got rid of them, I had like one regular cigarette. I went, I've
only
ever gonna do that. Literally, ever.
It's a different experience, but lots
awful.
of people did move from menthol into other cigarettes.
I can imagine,
become hardened smokers, and that's why they were banned.
Yeah,
they're still there as a e-cigarette flavour, and there's lots of arguments about whether we should be banning flavours in e-cigarettes. And,
yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
Because that makes it attractive.
For that very reason.
A watermelon in your mouth type thing.
Yeah. I mean, they're sort of helpful for smokers. If you talk to sort of...
Because it's more beneficial to have a flavour than tobacco.
Yeah, so someone who smokes and vapes, they want to have the flavour, and that's important to them. It's part of their experience. But it's also, if it's strawberry or bubble gum or something,
if
that's
you've
much
never
more
smoked
attractive
before.
to kids.
Yeah, like it's not a adult flavour.
No.
As it were. It's more aimed at a younger demographic.
Yeah, although a surprising number of sort of adult ex-smokers will smoke,
love a bubble gum.
Fruit flavoured e-cigarettes, yeah.
But it's more like the targeted audience. It feels like it's being targeted much younger.
Yes, and you get some of the advertising that or not advertising, but marketing of them.
Yeah,
it is feeling quite like it's aimed at children.
So have you tried vapes yourself? Something like that?
I have had. Purely for scientific.
You don't have to answer. You don't have to answer if you don't want to.
I've had a test of one just to sort of see. Okay,
you're the guy researching. I want to know what it's
about.
What
are these like? Yeah. And what's the attraction?
The attraction here. It's so inoffensive to smoke it. It tastes well better.
Inoffensive.
So if you smoke a vape and you don't smoke, it's still offensive. You'll cough. You'll feel, oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
But to smoke a cigarette, so if you did that and then had a cigarette, that would like burn you. It'd be awful. Whereas you could probably have one cough and be, oh, that's a bit weird, and then you still wouldn't mind going again. It's much less inoffensive. It tastes nice and it makes you feel a lot less worse. Definitely. So it's just from
you sound like you're trained up on it, you lads.
This makes me sound like I'm a real avid vape smoker, but no, just the occasion.
I can vouch. Ryan doesn't smoke. I've been in plenty of places where he's not smoked.
I've done it enough times to know the difference. As it were. But thank you, Ivan, for your time. Thank you very much for coming. It's been so interesting.
No, because it's been fun.
Genuinely, since when we first started this podcast, we put a list of, because we used to do it like a series called like Research News, not Research News, like Big Think Ideas, where we talk about like self-driving cars, electric cars, and the one we had at the top of the list straight away was vaping, smoking, that type of thing, because we found it so interesting, but we never found a way to do it. So this has been one we've wanted to do.
We basically didn't know what we were talking about.
So for like the past 30 episodes, there's been one to do, and it's not disappointed. It's been very, very interesting.
Fantastic.
So thank you very much for your time. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope you found it interesting as well. But before we let you go, we've got 2 more questions we'd like to ask.
Okay.
The first one is Sam's famous question.
My favourite question and famous question. Yeah. Okay, Ivan, you're on your deathbed.
Yeah.
You're dying.
You smoked too many cigarettes.
You smoked too many vapes. Turns out the research was wrong. They do kill you.
Yeah.
Okay, you're on your deathbed. You're going to die tomorrow. I'm the great provider, and I come down and say, Ivan, I'm sorry, you're going. But what is the one thing that you want to know that you do not know right now that will make that good night a little bit more sweeter? Could be something wide, big picture, or something personal.
We've had a range of questions.
We've had some stupid answers as well.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
Some really intelligent people giving really bad answers.
As I said, the best one we've had is it was like someone went, "Oh, I'd like to know if there was somewhere you go after you die," and we went, "But you'd want to know that as you're about to die. What if the answer's no?"
No. Yeah. That's right. You'd be very disappointed.
You're about an hour away from death, and it's like, well, that's it.
Eternal nothingness, and you just found that out from the point
for fact. Oh well, this could be a great hour, isn't it?
I've just thought of a really stupid one.
Say it, let's have it. That can be yours. stupid ones are welcome.
It's a bit like that. It's like, what could I have done with my life that would have earned me loads of money and been really exciting and interesting?
Like,
and then you'd sit there and think, oh yeah, I should have done that.
Like what specific date, time, minute? What decision was it I made that sent me on the wrong path? I tell you what, that'd be quite cool. That as a little highlight reel. Yeah, imagine, do you know what would be worse about that than not coming back with one answer? So you're right. There's like 50 times where you could have been a millionaire and you've messed them all up.
No, yeah, you bumped into this person. They were about to invite you to invest. You decided to go to some other pub, not meet them, and then you did this, whatever. And it's
exactly,
like, yeah, that's a
your
good
answer. Or we go for something else? Or
no, that would be
I like it. I like it.
That's interesting.
What is the point? I messed up. At what point did this all go wrong? Yeah.
It's like that. I saw someone say this. It's like when, like, say if you died, wouldn't it be great if you got like a highlight reel? Just that type of shit. Like you just sit there and watch it on the cinema, like Sky Sports on a Sunday.
All your best moments in life. So that'd be fab.
Get to pick a theme track. I could stay awake. Just, and you just like go through your life. Arnold Smith as you go out.
I'm crying. That's class. Yeah. And the final question.
Talking about music.
Yeah, talking about music. The final question we ask before we let anyone go is, what is your favourite song of all time?
Oh.
But then we also ask kind of another question underneath where, because there's so many songs, what's kind of your favourite at the minute? If the first question is.
What have you been listening to?
Perplexing. So I think actually it's Police. Do da da da.
Sting's amazing. Man.
It's just, I just find it really catchy, and it's just always enjoyed it. It was one of those, that band when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Super
Police
cool.
are unbelievable, man.
Because when we get round to it, because every guest that's come on, we've asked them that question. Yeah. So we're gonna put a big playlist up here. So
that'd be cool.
It's so rogue. So you're gonna have like,
there's so many different people's like songs
from heavy metal to like.
We've got the heaviest thrash on there to opera music.
Like all sorts. Yeah. So it'll be an interesting playlist.
Well.
It will, yeah. So once again, thank you very, very much for your time. It's been such an interesting episode. Thank you everyone for watching. If you liked it, make sure you leave a like. Comment, let us know your thoughts on vaping, smoking. Are you like me and pretend to everyone you don't vape and smoke and just give yourself away? Yeah. If you disliked it, there's a button for that as well. But we don't like you. But let us know anyway. Cheers for the viewing.
Cheers for the interaction.
Cheers for the interaction. And until the next one, we'll see you then.
Peace out, people. See you in a bit.